Hi guys, I just wanted to give you a summary of part 6 before I go on to part 7, just so that we're all on the same page. It's been a while. So, right before part 6, um, let's see. Oh, yeah, so remember. Santiago sees the two hawks in the sky, so he knows that it's a bad omen. And he sees the vision of an army invading the oasis, and he runs to tell the camel driver, and the camel driver tells him to tell the tribal chieftains about the armies that are coming. But Santiago's worried that he'll be laughed at, but the camel driver reassures him that the man of the desert are used to omens. Remember, that was one of your questions. Because he's worried about Fatima, Santiago does decide to tell the tribal chieftains what he saw. And then when he's at the chief's tent, he waits his turn for the audience with the leaders. Then he presents his vision. The chiefs debate and argue in a dialect he doesn't understand, but finally the elder ends the discussion. The elder says they have to listen to the messages of the desert, and that the next day everyone will be armed and on the lookout. For every 10 dead enemies, they'll give Santiago a piece of gold. However, if there is no attack, Santiago will be the one who ends up dead. Remember that crazy agreement? So on his way back to his tent afterward, a stranger shows up on a white horse with a falcon on his shoulder and a sword in his hand. Who's the stranger? He then asks who dares to interpret the flight of hawks. Santiago says that it's him. And then the stranger asks him what he's doing there, and Santiago says he's following his personal legend. The stranger said he was testing Santiago's courage because that's the most important quality for understanding the language of the world. Okay, guys, the language of the world. It's about following your feelings and intuitions, even if you don't fully understand them, right? So if he's alive tomorrow night, Santiago will visit the Alchemist. He realizes that he's the Alchemist. And then the oasis is ready for the attack. The battle is over in half an hour. Every invader is killed. Santiago is promoted to counselor of the oasis. He walks south towards the alchemist's tent, and he sits down there to wait for his new friend. The alchemist rides up with two dead hawks. They eat them. The alchemist has some advice. Sleep well, sell your camel, buy a horse, because remember, the camels are traitorous and the horses are more dependable animals. So then they go off to find the treasure together, and then Santiago comes to the alchemist's tent with his horse, and they ride out into the desert. The alchemist tells him to show him life in the desert. And Santiago's nervous because he doesn't know much about the desert yet. He lets the horse gallop until it finally stops, and the alchemist gets down and finds a hole in the ground. He sticks his arm into it all the way up to his shoulder and pulls out a poisonous cobra, and then he draws a circle in the sand and places the snake in it, who stays there. And he says that Santiago's finding life in the desert was the omen that he needed, and that he'd guide him to the pyramid. So Santiago says he wants to stay at the oasis because of Fatima, but the alchemist says that she'll wait for him. Remember, women are used to waiting for men when they live in the desert. If he stays in the oasis, he'll just lose everything. He'll just become that counselor of the oasis, and that's not what he wants. That's losing his dream. So the alchemist frees the snake by erasing the circle in the sand, and they head back to the oasis, planning to leave before sunrise. And Santiago says goodbye to Fatima, promising to come back. Then the alchemist and Santiago ride off into the desert, and after a week, the alchemist congratulates Santiago for coming so close to the end of his journey. He shows Santiago what's written in the emerald tablet, but Santiago can't understand it, so they keep riding. The alchemist tells Santiago to listen to his heart. This is very difficult because his heart seems to change its mind a lot. They keep passing armed tribesmen, and Santiago's heart starts to feel the fear, and the alchemist tells him that fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, so his heart then quiets down and he listens to it all the time. The alchemist tells him that his heart is returning to the soul of the world. And the last lesson is, before a dream is realized, The soul of the world throws out all its hardest tests in a darkest before the dawn fashion. Remember I told you you have to get to the bottom of the pit, the black hole, before you can see the life. So that is the summary for part 6, which we read last time. Moving on to part 7 now.